Hi again, it's me, Hayley Morgan, and this is my second video for Outside series featuring yours truly. The first one was on autistic communication. You can catch that on the Facebook and various other social media sites. And today is the second installment, and that's going to be on autistic marriage. Now, things are looking a little bit different. Last time I had my glasses on, as you know, it's my special topic. I was being very serious, but I thought I'd get a bit more comfortable and I get my mug of coffee, um, because this is far more informal, it's far more personal, and it's based on my experience. So obviously, with autistic marriage, I'm not going to start throwing theories, you know, inbox me for a reference kind of thing. This is based on my life. And the relevance that has to autism is that I am diagnosed. I was late diagnosed at age 30. My husband was undiagnosed. We both were when we met, but he was told he was bipolar for many years by various GPs, and he never really chased that up. But when I met him, and I was for some reason learning about autism at the time due to my teacher training, I think. Um, so we were starting to get together. He told me that his siblings were autistic too. So I started to think, maybe there's more going on, or maybe something that isn't bipolar there. Um, so at the time, what I thought was the best thing to do was to get him to do an online AQ test, which he scored very highly on, and that gave him the confidence then to go to the GP and ask. This was round about the time that things were getting serious with us. We were deciding that we were going to have children, and he wanted to get all his ducks in a row. He wanted to get some sort of clarity before we moved into that part of our life. So we both went to the GP and started the ball rolling then for an autism diagnosis for him. But as I was getting him diagnosed, I wasn't really I wasn't really feeling any of the stuff I was reading. I wasn't seeing that in myself, in my experience as an autistic woman. So it completely went over my mind, over my head. And it wasn't until we had our second child where I was signposted some websites, blogs, books about the autistic woman's perspective and how that can look different to the male perspective. Not that I'm keen on the gender stuff, but it spoke to me more. And I got diagnosed myself then at age 30 when I was pregnant with our second child. So now you know that, you can kind of understand why two undiagnosed people who knew that they were different, they saw the world differently, how you can kind of see what kind of barriers and enablers were present in our relationship in the early stages. So looking at my experiences, my dating experiences have definitely been made me put a wall up, really. I'd had bad luck. I blamed myself for there something being intrinsically wrong with me, that I had attracted these people who had issues. That's all I'm really comfortable saying about my past. But, I had my own baggage, that's fair to say, and so did he, so did my husband. And I did start to blame that on the fact that I felt different. I felt like it was something that I was doing wrong, something that was a deficit, something that was wrong with me. I couldn't behave, I couldn't perceive the same way as other people. So it's been a massive benefit for us both to identify as autistic, and our journeys, while his started a year or so before mine in terms of diagnosis, we kind of grew together as identifying as autistic. However, I'm doing that because there's two different pathways. So, as many of you know, I will never get tired of talking about autism. I've done a master's in it. It's my favourite topic, and I talk to other autistic people all day. While my husband feels that his diagnosis was definitely necessary and has helped him identify and reason things that have happened to him in the past and how he reacts to certain things. But other than that, that's as far as his identity goes and his place in the community. He doesn't find a place in the community in terms of that diagnostic label. He's got other communities he belongs to, and I'm absolutely fine with that. Um, but I do wonder sometimes if we hadn't got together, if Match.com had been out of my price range, because that's where we met, would we both be diagnosed? Would I be making myself mask a lot more? Would I be doing a job or a series of jobs that I hated like I was before? Um, so that's a kind of a strange thought experiment, but one that makes me definitely grateful for where I am now. Um, so yes, Match.com. I actually pestered him first because he had a very long bio on his page, profile thing, very dry, very well written, and that attracted me to him. And I sent him an equally eloquent long message back, and I didn't even get a wink back. So, Richard, you really very nearly missed your chance. Thankfully, I persevered and I sent a cringy little wink back about 2 weeks later. When we started talking, it wasn't until we started talking in person that he revealed that when I first sent that message, the reason he didn't respond is because he was involved with somebody he thought he liked, but they were judging him quite negatively for various reasons. So he had his guards up as well. So it's just luck. Honestly think it was luck of the draw that we met. I don't think we would have met if it wasn't for Match.com, because while I was living in Cardiff at the time in a flat share with my colleague. Um, so I was a bit more social, but he was living up in the top end of the valleys, so 40 minutes away from where I was. And he's very much a stay-at-home person. He's got his interests, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Match.com. To the point that I sent a message to Match.com when we got engaged, I think, and I was thanking them for my marriage, for enabling my marriage with that online communication. Um, I like to wind him up. Yeah, I like to wind him up a little bit sometimes because I'm not a hoarder, but when it comes to emails and proof and receipts, as the kids call it, I've got all our original emails from when we exchanged email addresses on Match.com to get to know each other. And funnily enough, some of the first things we spoke about were very, in hindsight, very autistic topics. Um, our shared love of gaming, um, our love of Tetris, and we both started to rant for a good few days about how annoyed we were with, because we were watching The Apprentice at the time, and how they used a lot of empty language, a lot of metaphors, a lot of idioms, and how they said a lot without actually exchanging anything that had meaning. Um, so looking back at those emails, we were sharing information and finding those similarities in ways that um, we didn't connect with the outside world quite the same way as other people, and that was how our bond started. Um, and I'm still, like I said, I still got those emails. I'm still grateful for that. So looking back, there were a few things that we missed really, that, and our families and people around us, where now we know it's obvious that we were undiagnosed autistic people who were struggling. But one of the best things we did was decide to struggle together, as romantic as that sounds. But on that topic, we we seem to have a very different idea of what romance is compared to our neurotypical peers and people in the outside world. I wrote a blog about this on my blog, coldteaconnoisseur.co.uk, and I think it's titled My Autistic Marriage. So the examples I use there are things like things that are very romantic tropes that people would, you know, think are grand gestures of love and would really, really be into, but would, for us as autistic people, be absolute hell. So, you hear these things like flowers. Okay, I don't have the executive functioning, um, and short, my memory is very poor, and I've got enough tasks as it is. And if you give me flowers, they're going to die. Even succulents, I've got something of a succulent graveyard in my garden. So, flowers, not really my thing because I haven't got the executive functioning to look after them. Box of chocolates. I'm not really a sweet tooth person. Um, what else? We were joking about what a nightmare it would be if one of us planned a surprise trip to Paris for the other one. Like, can you imagine not having prepared for that and getting on a crowded train, not knowing where you're going or what you're doing the end of that day or within the next hour? That would be really, really stressful and quite a cruel thing to inflict on an autistic person. So we started to bond early on, and we still do now, over how, I wouldn't say we have different morals, but we put different value on things that people traditionally call romantic. Um, and the things that we do consider romantic, when you look at the logic behind it, it is very autistic. So, for example, um, some of the examples I use on that blog post is, standing your ground in a PIP tribunal when your communication spoons have all gone, but you fighting to defend your partner. That is romance to us. So is when one of you has had enough people and is completely up there for the day, but really wants to catch a Pokemon in Pokemon Go, and the other person will go and wade through a busy shopping centre to go and catch it. That is romance to us. As is one of the loveliest examples that I can't wait to tell my children about when they're older, of their dad doing a romance. Don't tell him I said that. But I had a Big Breakfast mug. Do you remember that show, The Big Breakfast, with Johnny Vaughan, Denise Van Outen, Chris Evans, Gabby Roslin, I think, back in the day. So when I was a kid, I'd watch that every morning before school. And I used to have the big yellow mugs with the Big Breakfast on it. And I found it in my mother's cupboard not long after I moved in with Richard. And it was a lovely thing that I brought from home that maintains my routine in my new house with him. And a couple of years later, he was washing it and he dropped it and smashed it. And he was devastated, because, not because he was worried about my reaction, but because he knew how much that meant to me. Like, not just the nostalgia, but how that was part of my routine and how important routine is to me. The very specific weight of that mug, the feel of the glaze, the size of the handle, and how much tea I can fit in it, and the cooling down rate of the tea, even because it's quite a wide mug. Um, it does seem like really nitpicky stuff, but to me that's really romantic, because he went on eBay, he understood how that was important to me, and he went on eBay, he bid and won on a Big Breakfast mug, and he bought it for me. And to me that's romantic, because he understands my values, while they may not be things that the outside world think is romantic. Um, it was to me, and I'm so proud of that little example that I can share with the kids one day. So in terms of actual marriage, getting married, I was never that girl that wanted to get married. The other children were playing it in school. Who's going to marry so and so? The little games of paper and playing kiss chase, and that was never my bag. I wasn't definitely close to the idea, but I just didn't see the logic or the point behind it. And my husband was pretty much on the same page. He felt the same way. Um, I never played, bride stuff. I never played Barbies. It didn't appeal to me. The reason we did get married, obviously, is because we love each other. But because early 2013, I suffered a miscarriage when we decided to start having children. And at the time, um, it wasn't the easiest experience. And at one point, we were worried that if my next of kin were to start making decisions, we were worried that that would be my parents, and they don't necessarily have a say in my body and our potential children. So we decided, although it's not very romantic, we decided to protect ourselves in that way and get married. So my marriage, I joke that my wedding was one of the most autistic things ever. I picked a certain date because I liked the look of the numbers and how you can turn the numbers into a formula that I can remember. Um, I bought my wedding dress for 80 quid on a monsoon sale, because I really didn't care about dresses and stuff. In fact, if I had more confidence, I probably would have worn a suit myself. Um, you know, I looked nice, don't get me wrong. It was nice putting a bit of makeup on and have my hair curled for me and all that business. But we always joke about the fact that I stepped a muddy hole through my wedding dress, my 80 quid wedding dress. I stepped a hole through it before I even got to the wedding venue. Um, and we joke about how much I didn't care. And how we struggled with how hot the room was. And even though we invited very few people, we didn't want to do a big wedding thing. I think we had about 30 people between our two sides of our families and my friends. Um, we joked that it was not a very autistic wedding. Um, we had food. We enjoyed the food. I gave a speech. He didn't because he's not comfortable with speaking in public. I gave a speech that made everybody laugh. Um, the song that I walked out of the ceremony to was a joke song, something from South Park, I think, that had the only intention of that song wasn't to be romantic, it's because I wanted to turn around and see my brother-in-law laughing his head off. So it had a very, it was not tongue in cheek, but not far off, you know. Um, so we gave a speech and everything, but we were pretty desperate for people to go home. We were hot, we were overwhelmed. I was secretly 10 weeks pregnant with my first child, and we wanted everybody to just go away now, thank you, please. And I don't even like cake. My mother insisted I had a wedding cake. I'm hoping she doesn't walk in for this bit, but ma'am, I didn't want a wedding cake. I didn't want to do the invite stuff. I just wish, there's so many things I wish I would have done looking back if I'd been more confident in my identity as an autistic person. So I've given you almost a whistle-stop tour of my marriage, why I got married, how we got together, and you know, the 101 reasons why that looked a bit different because we were autistic. But the reason I picked this topic is because I wanted people to know that autistic marriage, autistic relationships, romance, whatever you want to call it, it is just as valid, just as complex as those of neurotypical people in the general population. I want to educate people about that and how while we may look different, we may behave differently, we may have different values. Um, it doesn't mean that our relationship doesn't work as well. It doesn't mean that we are less compatible with a neurotypical person, even if we have a shared interest or we love each other. I want to take away that stigma of what I want to take away is the head tilt. I've had it a few times, and some people may know what I mean by that. But when I tell people that my husband and I are autistic, whenever that may come up, I often get the head tilt of pity, of, oh, you both like it, oh, bless you, and you're together and you manage that, oh, bless you. I don't want to be inspiration porn, I don't want to be pity, I don't want to, oh, you overcome your autism to get together. I want to educate people that it is a facet of our lives in varying degrees for both of us, but it does not, it doesn't mean that we never argue or we always argue. We have a complex, ever-changing, evolving relationship like anybody else. And that's something I'm going to pick up on in the next video when I talk about autistic parenting and how that doesn't mean that we are lesser parents, we just have a different way of doing things. So I hope I've conveyed that enough. I hope that I've embarrassed him a little bit. No, I don't hope that. He's yeah, I'll let you know what he thinks about that. But and apologies to my mother, I didn't want a wedding cake. But we did it, and we're here, and we've got two beautiful children. And thank you for listening to me rambling on about my marriage of all things. I would say leave a comment, but I don't know if I'm receptive to any comments about my marriage. But if there's anything that you identify with or that strikes a chord, I'd love to hear about it, or your own funny stories about your autistic wedding or the autistic way that you met. I love swapping stories with people. So I'm keen to hear what you think, and thank you very much for listening again. Keep an eye out for the next one. Like I said, that's autistic parenting. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.